Welcome again to another training video with, our head coach, Dina Maloney, and Dr. Gary here. And as you know, we're always working very hard to make good bosses into great leaders with compassion, accountability. And today we're going to be talking about coaching, one of my favorite topics, but you're making a living on this, aren't you, Dina?
Yes, it's great to make a living on what you're passionate about.
Yeah, we hope everybody could do that. And I consider it the most important leadership skill that we can learn. Some of the basics of coaching that some of you have seen before, but we want to make sure that we understand that this principle of asking questions, not answering questions, because we get into this trap of answering questions because we're so used to telling people this and telling people that and letting them know how smart we are. And coaching is like just the opposite, right? So let's turn it over to our head coach to just cover some of the basics that we need to remind ourselves of in coaching. Dina, take it away.
You know, one of the fundamentals of coaching that in a management and leadership position that we have to really try to stay away from is trying to fix other people's problems. And coaching really provides that opportunity for people to support others in bringing the solutions out themselves rather than try to solve it for them. And we do this through questions, specific types of questions. Who do we want to be as a leader? I want to develop people to be able to solve their own problems.
Isn't the challenge for many of us, we get promoted because we're able to solve problems. So we think that that's our job, is to solve problems. So when somebody comes to us with a problem, we solve it. So that's really the mindset that you're talking about, that we have to shift from solving the problem to helping others solve the problem. And that's kind of a definition of leadership, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell people all the time, I try to switch the speed on them and say, you know, how would you feel if people jumped in and solved all of your problems for you?
Yeah.
You know, and most people will say, I would probably feel diminished, or I would feel devalued, or I probably feel really bad about myself. And so, you know, I get them to understand, when you jump in and try to solve their problem, that's how you're making somebody else feel.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about how you want to make them feel. I want to empower them. I want them to feel supported. And, you know, that's why, Gary, part of our program is about helping people come up with their leadership mission statement so that we are always aligned in our actions.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the basic do's and don'ts. You know, when we talk, how do we go about this, right? Tell me a little bit about some of the do's. What are the things that we're supposed to do as a coach?
So you ask probing questions, which means that you're asking questions that are getting other people to think, right? Rather than what we call closed-ended questions, which really just ask them for a yes or no, or a one or a two, or and so asking questions that makes the other person think more deeply. One of the hardest things for people to do is to sit in silence. So sometimes you may ask a question and that other person needs a moment to really think about what their answer is. We tend to jump in. Silence is a very uncomfortable place. And so we then try to jump in, and we may ask a question in a different way because we've assumed that they didn't understand our first question, which isn't necessarily the truth. There are people that just need to process.
That we learn this in personality styles and communication styles. We need to give people time to process sometimes. Just give them a minute to think. We think, you know, you're supposed to have the answer. Well, if you're developing them, they don't have the answer. Give them a minute. Just give them a minute to think.
Don't try to become part of the solution, right? In that a lot of times when people come to us, we've already experienced what they're experiencing at that moment. So it's really easy to say, oh, I remember what I did. And honestly, you know, one person's problem isn't necessarily the same problem that you had in a similar situation. And staying on track. Because a lot of times when people are emotionally charged, they'll come to you with multiple layered problems. And as someone who sits in a coaching seat, our responsibility is to try to get them to get to the true problem. The first problem is never the real problem.
It's, yeah, as we say in engineering, it's a symptom, right? And there's levels of problems and consequences and all this stuff. A lot of times we start talking about the symptom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Some of the things in that coaching seat that we should try to avoid is, and that golden rule of stay away from why. Right? You have a lot of other options to choose from: what, how, when, who, and so that instance of, well, why did you do it that way? Well, why was that your answer to that? Why are you showing up in that way? Will make people feel very defensive, like you're coming at them.
It's the parent question, right? You make a mistake as a kid and the parent says, why did you do that? And it's just a trigger for a lot of people. So we want to avoid the why question most of the time.
And a lot of times we'll find ourselves interrupting. Someone's talking, we've asked them a question. They may take longer to answer it than we want them to or need them to, because I'm on the clock. I got stuff to do. So we'll interrupt. And what interruption is a reflection of is you're not listening. If you're not truly listening to what the person's saying because you're not letting them finish, you're thinking about what the answer is, and that's why you just try to move in and get it out. And so that's why people will tend to at times then not come to you with problems. And then as a leader, you're sitting back saying, well, I don't understand. If that was happening, why didn't you come to me? Well, because every time I come to you, you interrupt me and you give me, what your solution is.
Well, I've got the great answers. Why, just come to me and I can explain. Yes. I can tell you what to do. Why don't you listen to me? Yeah. Yeah.
And, Gary, if I can say, all of these things all come up into one core value, I think, in coaching, and that's listening. There are different levels of listening, and as a coach, you really have to be at that level 3 high level listening, to where you're out of your own head about how this whole thing affects you. And if you hear yourself saying, well, I would do it this way, or you're now at level 1. And so it's really moving yourself and getting into the habit of being as a level 3 listener, which means I'm totally focused on what this person is bringing to me now.
Yeah. Yeah. The very active listening, right? A lot of questions, paraphrasing back what you hear them say, so you have understanding, and then guiding them with your own questions to come up with their own solution. And don't fall into the trap, or try not to fall into the trap when they say, gee, I don't know what to do. If you have time, I can remember a coaching session I had just recently with an executive, and they said, I really don't know what to do. And rather than jumping in, like sometimes I have to admit I like to do and give advice, is I said, well, we have some time. Why don't you think about this over the weekend, come up with 2 or 3 options, and maybe by Monday you'll have an answer, and just let it go. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to all be solved right now, right?
Right.
Let's talk about the different types of questions that we can ask, and what's effective and what isn't effective with the different types of questions in different contexts and scenarios.
Yeah. So first, really great type of question to use is what we call open-ended questions, which tend to uncover people's feelings and emotions around things. Because let's face it, a lot of times people are reacting, and they're coming to you with a reaction to a situation, and their emotions are involved. And sometimes as a coach, a leader as a coach, we're just helping them break down and separate the emotion from the fact, right? So if you ask a question such as, so tell me what's challenging you the most right now, that's an open-ended question.
So what's the difference between, I've heard this thrown around, closed-ended, open-ended question. What's the difference between a closed-ended and an open-ended question?
Okay, so rather than say what's challenging you, right, what's the most challenging thing for you right now, which is open-ended question, a closed-ended question would be, so are you really frustrated about how that person spoke to you today?
So it's like a yes or a no. If I'm going to,
yes or no.
Yes, I'm frustrated, or no, I'm not frustrated. Yes, I know what I'm doing. No, I don't know what I'm doing. Rather than asking the question, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah. Yes. So closed questions really just pose 2 options. Now, I will say that it's not that we never use a closed-ended question. There are some specific key times where,
Mm.
For an example, sometimes I use the question, well, would you rather sit on this and not do anything and
Right.
have things stay exactly the way they are, or would you rather step up and create change around this?
Right.
Sometimes just, and that's giving them an option, but sometimes people don't see what their options are.
Mm. Mm.
So, there are specific times what would work, but if you find yourself asking questions that require just a yes or no, it's easy for people to say, oh yeah, that's it. And you're not getting them to think more deeply, which is going into the probing question, which are very effective.
Mm.
So probing questions helps them gain clarity around whatever issue they're facing. And so it's saying, so if you don't have that conversation with that person, what would happen?
That's so trying to figure out the consequences of no action.
Right.
Yeah, just really so the probe is to really get them to think about what might happen. Right.
Right. Because a lot of times people will come to you with fear about, well, if I do this, if I go and talk to Gary about this, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And all of those three things are why they're not having the conversation. So a very quick and easy probing question is, okay, but if you don't talk to Gary, what's going to happen?
Yeah. So that brings me to, if you were to say that to me, that brings me to that closed-ended question that might be, is that really what you believe is going to happen?
Right.
And
Right.
well, maybe. Okay. So the maybe opens the door for a more open conversation, right?
We think, okay, well, I just asked a question, but it's not really effective is the leading question. And leading questions are, we rely on those to be able to solve a problem, but still ask a question at the same time. So if somebody came to me and said, I'm really stuck in this, my leading question might be, well, have you tried this? Yes, I'm asking a question, but I've just given them an answer.
Yeah. And we've seen this so much in this leadership program where people are just starting to learn how to coach. And many of the first few questions people ask will be, have you tried? And then, well, I asked a question. Yeah. So we've made a little bit of progress. And now we need to make the next step that says from have you tried this to what have you tried?
Yes. Again, let's just put it in a nutshell. When someone comes to you with an issue or a problem, I always say, ask more than tell. And so if you find yourself becoming an investigative reporter, well, tell me all the facts. What have you done so far? What have you haven't done? Then what you're doing is you're trying to solve the presenting problem, which probably isn't the real problem. It's about asking questions to get to the true problem of what's happening, and then work with that person on, how to move forward.
And I think that the example that you just made of the investigative reporter in business is what we're trying to do is gather all the information so that I can tell you what the solution is, right?
Yes.
That's what you're really getting at. So I can show you how smart I am. Oh, I've done this before. Here's all the facts. This is what you're telling me. This is what you need to do.
Right. Yes.
And coaching that's the antithesis of coaching, right?
Yes. Coaching is not a SWOT analysis.
So Dina, with some of the basic do's and don'ts and some of the types of questions, I think the thing to do is for us to, let's try a coaching session. Let's show people what a good coaching session looks like. Okay.
Okay.
And I think that because I've got lots of problems and you're the head coach, I think that you should be the coach and I should have the problem. So hey, Dina, how's it going? I'm so glad that we're getting back together again for me to get some coaching. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So tell me what's on your mind.
Oh, other than having COVID a few weeks ago and getting over that, and then my wife had it, and all kinds of things. I think the biggest thing is I've got some planning coming up with the team in a few weeks, and I just feel like with the team being kind of disconnected and people being out, that we're not going to be prepared, and it's going to be a waste of time.
So what else about that situation might be weighing on you?
Um, I just really haven't done much to get prepared for it and to plan what's going to happen. And I'm just getting the notes from the last meeting put together by my assistant right now. And I'm just hoping we'll be ready to go in a couple of weeks, but I'm feeling a little anxious about this whole thing being ready. And I don't want the team to take their day for us to be together and then not be ready for it.
In this particular situation, what do you think is the most challenging about it? Because I hear a number of things that are coming up. You haven't done enough on the front end. You know, how are people going to respond? What are they going to think? So if you looked at the whole package of this, what is most challenging for you?
I feel like I want to make sure that it's a day of value, let's say, that we follow up from our last meeting in a really positive way, that we make progress. And without the right kind of preparation for it, I'm out all next week. Here it is, the end of the week. I'm out all next week. So a few days before, I guess I could put something together and throw it out to the team. I don't know. I'm just thinking I just ought to postpone it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're in a mindset that if you don't do all of this yourself, then there's no point in holding it.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm feeling a lot of personal pressure to do some things to prepare. Yes.
So what are some options that maybe you haven't thought about? Let's really get into it. What are some options that you can look at that will help you be more prepared for this meeting, which seems to be what's on your mind the most?
With my assistant and my brother John, who works with us, why don't I just turn the process over to them and tell them to prepare the agenda, get things together? They were in the last meeting, and do all the pre-work. I guess I could ask them to do it and have it ready for me by the end of the week when I'm gone.
So Gary, how often do you rely on other people when you get into a situation like this?
Not very often. I think I've heard this feedback before, that I'm trying to do too much on my own and not engaging the team with some of this stuff. A lot of my team have their own businesses. They work for themselves. They do their own thing. And I feel like when I ask them to do things and not paying them to do it, I feel like I'm taking advantage of them.
And have, in the past, what kind of feedback have you gotten from your team members about how they feel about collaborating and putting the work in?
They keep telling me they want to collaborate more, and they want to be involved more, and they like doing it. And I guess it's time for me to listen to them.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you're telling yourself a story about what you're fearing, and there's no real fact to base that off of, because you've got them telling you they want to do work, and you're worried that you're going to put too much on their plate. So with that said, how can you approach them with it so that you're ensured that you're not putting too much on their plate?
I guess to let them know how I'm feeling about it, and then to ask them what they would be willing to do.
Maybe if you ask rather than tell them.
I can do that. In fact, I think that one of the things I'll do over the weekend is to send an email out to the team and say, look, we're having this meeting in a couple of weeks, and I'd like to make sure that it's of value and that it meets the expectations of everybody. What do you want to accomplish in this meeting, and what can you contribute, or what would you like to contribute?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it seems like you have some action steps to move forward. If I could ask you though, what deeper meaning did you get out of our conversation right now?
Well, a couple of things, I think, is I'm creating an anxiety about not being prepared and planned in a situation where I'm not asking for help with people that have told me in the past that they're willing to help. And right. I think that if they're telling me that, then I keep falling into this same pattern of mindset, of thought, that these people are there to support me. They really feel like they're part of the team, and I need to listen to them. Hey, Dina, how you doing?
I'm okay. I've had a hard week. Um,
Tell me.
lots going on in my life, but this time is about you. So tell me what's going on with you.
I think I've had a similar, challenges. I had COVID myself. My wife had COVID. I think the dog had COVID. I'm not sure, but we've all been struggling with this stuff, and I think everybody's a little bit on edge and kind of feeling like we're languishing and challenged and everything. And I guess today the biggest thing that I got is I got a planning session in 2 weeks, and I just don't feel like I'm prepared for it. And I think I'm just going to postpone it.
Well, let's stop. Tell me what you've done so far.
Well, we had a meeting a month ago, and I gave the flip chart pads to my assistant. She's going to get the notes out from the meeting in the next few days, so everybody will have that. And we've got to follow up.
Okay, but I don't mean what's happened in the past. I mean, like what do you have on your list of things to do, like that you can check off that you've accomplished?
Well, I'm gone all next week. I'm out. I'm in business meetings down in Florida all next week, and then the following week we've got the planning session. I've got coaching sessions and training and workshops and everything, and then of course we've got a meeting on that Friday to do more planning for 2022, and I'm just not ready.
So you're having this meeting. Well, who's helping you?
My assistants helped me a little bit. My brother's giving me some advice on what to do, but other than that, it's on me.
Have you asked anybody?
Not other than my assistant. No, I haven't asked.
Why?
Anybody.
Why wouldn't you just ask people in your that are attending?
Because these people don't really work for me. They're all, we're just kind of associates in this loose organization, and they've got their own businesses. They've got their own problems to deal with. So I think that asking them to do it would just be insulting.
Well, Gary, I got to tell you, in my experience in working with other people, because what we do for a living, we collaborate with people all the time. What I have found is ask, and if the answer is no, it's no.
What? So I should call every one of them up and ask them? Okay. I guess I can. Yeah.
They're either going to say yes or no. So just ask them.
All right. Maybe I can have a meeting before then real quick for 10 minutes and get everybody together and assign them some tasks.
You might want to ask them first, like, here are the tasks. What do you want to do, rather than just assign it? If you assign it, then maybe they will take offense to that. So what I would do is I would ask them first, here are the things that need to be done. Who's going to do it?
What can you do? But get volunteers, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I guess I can do that.
Well, and I didn't mean to do this, but, in the first versus the second, when I was asking you those second set of questions, my whole attitude changed.
Yes.
I was like disgusted, like, well, haven't you done that? Whereas when you sit in a coaching seat, you're just more nurturing. You just are more inquisitive rather than, are you kidding me right now?
One of the things that you had in your list of do's and don'ts, under the do's, it was monitor tone.
Right.
And that kind of brings monitoring your emotional intelligence, monitoring your self-management, your relationship management, and really understanding the different approach can create a tone. What we can ask is for people to just practice. Take the complex and make it simple. I think asking open-ended questions with what, where, who, when, how, and sometimes why, depending on the situation, right? And listening. It's just asking questions and listening and helping people solve their own questions. That kind of encapsulates coaching. What do you think?
If you find yourself trying to look for facts, then you're trying to solve a problem. And that's not what coaching is about. And, as we talk about, there are times where we're going to have to step in and help solve a problem. But that initial conversation is meant to try to figure out whether you need to get involved or not and what the true problem is.
In business, we have a lot of problems to solve. And we
Yes.
do get into that mode of problem solving a lot. So that can happen. But to your point, let's start by asking questions and helping people solve their own problems. Let's just have that mindset, right? If we do
Right.
that, I think we'll do a better job as leaders.
Absolutely.
Hey, Dina, thanks a lot. Our head coach of Statarius,
Yes.
Dina Maloney, again, I
Yes.
really appreciate it. And again, we're making good bosses into great leaders with compassion, accountability through outstanding, excellent, and sometimes competent coaching. Thanks a lot, Dina.
Thanks. Bye.